In an earlier chapter, I discussed how InDesign documents don't embed all your placed images. Rather, they just link to the original files on disk. That means if you're going to send your document to somebody else to print it, you need to send them your linked files too. In fact, you should probably send them the fonts that you used too, just in case they don't have the same fonts as you. Fortunately, you don't have to go and find and copy all those files manually. Instead, just go to the File menu and choose Package. When you do this, InDesign gives you a summary of your document, and you can look through each of the panes here to get some information about your document, including all the fonts that you used, the images that you used, the colors and inks, and so on. In the Links and Images panel here, I can see that there's a yellow alert icon. InDesign is trying to be helpful here. It's alerting me that there are 10 images in this document that are in the RGB color space instead of CMYK. Now that's not really a problem. Later in this chapter, we'll learn how you can convert those RGB to CMYK on the fly when you print. But it is something to pay attention to, especially if you're sending this document to someone else to print. They should definitely know that you've got RGB images. Anyway, I don't really pay much attention to the information in the package dialog box here, because I've already used the Preflight panel to do a thorough preflight of my document. So I quickly move through this by clicking on the Package button. Next, InDesign shows me the Printing Instructions dialog box. I could take a few minutes to fill this in, and if I do that, InDesign will write all this information to disk with my package as a little text file that my printer can open and get my contact information and so on. But honestly, I've actually never met a printer who pays attention to it, so usually anything you do in here is going to be ignored. I just ignore it myself and click Continue. Finally, we're brought to the Create Package folder, which lets me name the folder in which all my files are going to go, and it also gives me some options. For example, I can choose whether to copy my fonts or not. Notice that it will not copy CJK fonts, that's Chinese, Japanese, and Korean fonts. Those are really large and usually copy-protected fonts, so it's going to ignore those. But all my normal fonts are going to be copied if I turn that on. The next two checkboxes have to do with the graphics in my file. I almost always want to copy my graphics, so I leave those turned on. I almost always want to copy my graphics, and also when I do that, I want my InDesign document to be updated to link to the files in my package folder instead of the files on my hard drive. So those three checkboxes almost always stay on. Okay, let's go ahead and create this file by clicking Package. Now, because I'm including my fonts, InDesign warns me that the fonts might be protected by copyright, so be careful who I give them to. In general, you do have the right to send your fonts to somebody else so that they can print your document, as long as they don't hold on to the fonts and use them for something else. But you should check to make sure you have permission to do so if you're using a special third-party font. I'll click OK, and it goes through and packages my document. Let's go check out that folder. Here's my package folder on my desktop, and if I double-click on that, you can see my InDesign document, the instructions folder, which is probably going to be ignored, and two other folders. Links contains all of the images that I used in my document, and Document Fonts contains all the fonts because I turned on that checkbox. Now, I do want to say something special about the Documents Fonts folder because it's a kind of a special new feature in CS5. If you include fonts and put them in a folder called Document Fonts, if I send this to somebody else like my printer and they open this InDesign document, InDesign automatically loads the fonts that are in the Document Fonts folder. That person does not need to use a font manager or even copy the files to their hard drive. It's just much more clean and efficient. Now, I often use the package feature for another purpose too. It's a good way to save and archive all the files necessary on a job and get all the graphics, which I might have imported from all over my hard drive or off a server even, get all of those into one folder. But if you do this, just beware of one thing. Package will not grab any images that are hiding off on the pasteboard. It only takes images that are on your pages. Other than that, it's a great help.